They were hockey and baseball, and there's like, this is not right.
I know it's hard. Sometimes I'll catch myself when I'm coaching.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, February 5, 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We've met compliance with official notifications. Roll call, please.
Nick Olson.
Here.
Nick Schumacher excused.
Yes.
Brooke Taylor.
Here.
Diana Smith.
Here.
I'm here. President Steve Wilson.
Here. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for comments by members of the public during the meeting as indicated on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to address the board on any of the topics included on tonight's agenda may do so by signing up on the public comments sign-up sheet by the entrance prior to the start of the meeting. The board requests refraining from making any comments involving personally identifiable information about students, staff, or administration. Comments should be respectful, focused on the items being considered by the board, and will be restricted to 3 minutes in length. With that, we'll go to our open session agenda. Action today, taken today's meeting is to be forwarded for recommendation for final approval at the next regular school board meeting on Monday, February 12, 2024. First up on the agenda, comments by members of the public. Nobody has signed up, so we'll right into the report of the superintendent.
Okay, I only have one informational item, and I have Principal Danielle here to give us an update about Northern Lights.
Guys,
Welcome.
well, thanks for having me. There's just update you guys kind of from when I was here. I think I was here in September. I'm usually one of the first ones. So
You're coming around.
yeah, we're coming back around.
Yep.
Danielle Parrish, Northern Lights Elementary. Whenever we come to share information with you guys, you want to know like what's going on in the buildings. And I like to hear directly from the teachers to share that feedback with you guys. So what I did is I actually surveyed the staff, and the celebrations and the challenges are words from our staff members. They're not my words. And I actually just copy and pasted. For the most part, everything's spelled right. I think. But I'm not going to read these to you, but I do encourage you guys to read them. The biggest celebration in our building, you can see in the first 2 bullets, really talking about the culture and how our work with PBIS is feeling really good. Our staff are appreciating the measures we have in place to reward our students for things that they're doing well and align with our work, respect, and belong initiatives. There's a lot of talk about our climate and culture up there, so that's really exciting. Something else that's been brought to light, which I talked about last time I was up here, is the strong teacher leadership. The work that we're doing towards our goals is driven by our teachers, and the PD that is provided to our staff is provided by the teachers that are doing the work. And I was happy to see that the teachers were identified that as one of our biggest celebrations. They like that. This ties into our climate and culture. Our behavior referrals, our ODRs, has significantly reduced from where we were at this point last year. We have 195 less referrals at this point this year than where we were last year. And I think that speaks to the work our teachers put in around our PBIS framework. So that's really exciting. We wanted to celebrate our PTA leadership and our family engagement coordinator, and then up to higher a little bit was our exceptional paraprofessionals. So I, like to celebrate all of our staff members, but I was really happy that the teachers wanted to celebrate the support staff that work to support the classrooms. The challenges, this probably won't surprise you, but most of our challenges are around what's going on with our budget right now. There's something with our wages up there, trying to make sure we, can catch up with the area schools and when it comes to pay. We continue to have the challenge of not having enough mental health resources, and that hasn't changed from all the years that I've come to present to you guys. That's something that they continue to talk about. And sometimes attendance for some of our support staff has been a challenge. Right now, everybody's dealing with all the illnesses, the sicknesses that we have going around, and teachers work really hard to plan for small groups, and when staff are absent for very good reasons, we have to hunt and figure things out on the fly. So that's a challenge that we're facing right now with our staff. An update on our goals. Our reading goal is that by this spring, we want to make sure that the students at Northern Lights are making typical or aggressive growth in reading. And we want to see that our K-1 students are going from 61% that made typical and aggressive growth to 71%. And then our grades 2 through 5 we start at 59%, and we want to end the year at 69%. And currently, as of February 1st, right now, our K-1 kiddos are tracking at about 57% are making typical or aggressive growth. And when we did our data dives earlier this month, after we finished our Fast Bridge, the K-1 teachers were feeling pretty good about that rate. There were components that were being assessed that our teachers haven't taught yet. And so even though, it's at 57%, we're not panicking. We're feeling good about where we're at with that. And then our grades 2 through 5 right now, 52% of our students are making typical or aggressive growth. And then I just included the little bar graph that goes with that data. Our other goal is around attendance. And this is a very challenging goal to control when we don't have control over what happens outside of our walls. But we have a lot of exciting things to report on this. We're measuring that our students will miss. You're allowed to miss 10 days of school, right? By DPI. Last year, 52% of our student population missed 10 or more days, which is too much. It's hard to make good student growth when you're not in school. So we wanted to decrease that to 40% of our students missing that much. And that number was pulled based off of, we looked at Great Lakes numbers and Cooper's numbers, since we kind of are in the same area of town. So that's how we picked our target of 40%. And right now, as of February 1st, this is really big, with drum roll please, we are at 8.9% that have missed 10 or more days, which is fantastic. Last year at this point, we were at 20% of our students that had missed 10 or more days. So some fun little side notes that really speak to the work that our teachers are doing on our action plan. There's a lot of different items or components that they're working with our families and kids with. And the graph that's on the right, those were our top 10 students last year that had the highest rate of absenteeism. Last year, student number 1 had 28 absences at this point. This year, that student is at 10. Student 2 went from 27 absences to 12. Student 3, 24 down to 10. So you can see 9 of our 10 students have decreased significantly the amount of absences that they had from last year to this year. So I think that's a big celebration.
Danielle, what do you attribute both your school-wide data and those student data points to? I know it's more than one thing, but.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the weather.
That's true.
I think that's part of it. Some of the action items that our teachers have been doing to address attendance is every month the PLCs pull the attendance reports for their kids, and they intentionally reach out and make connections with families. And that started the first month of school to be proactive. What can we do? How can we help get your kids to school? And it's been really helpful for the families to hear from the teacher first about ways that they can support their kids getting to school rather than it coming from the office. We're still reaching out to see how we can support them, but for some families, it's a little bit more intimidating when it's coming from the office rather than the teacher. And I think that really has played a very positive role. So that's a big, exciting data point for us. Our action steps, we're moving into our 120th day of school come March 8th. So what are we doing to continue to help our kids grow in reading? Right now, we're really focusing on what's happening during independent work time during Reading Boost. When the teachers differentiate their instruction, the work that they're doing with their 2 or 3 kids at their teacher table is really good. Dave and I have been going around doing observations. It's really good instruction that's happening. what's happening when the kids are working independently at their stations. That's the piece that we're going to continue to build on, to make sure what the kids are doing when they're working independently is making them better readers, or it's making them better mathematicians. So our independent stations, staff are sharing with each other what they're doing that's working. Staff are going to share what they're doing, and they're going to have the data to support. This is working, and here's my data to prove that it's working. February 27th, we have at our PLC's, I can't remember if it's PLC or staff meeting on the 27th, Tuesday, whatever that date, the day is. Teachers are going to specifically share out from things that they start at the beginning of the year. And the teachers have been identified, and they're really excited to do that. We just don't have available time between now and then to have it happen sooner, which they're kind of bummed out about. And phonemic awareness and phonics, we're really focusing on, here's the end goal, here's where we need to be. We've done a lot of really good, we've implemented new things to help with those areas. We're not adding anything, we're just going to refine it and get better at it. So we're going to be sharing on our goals. And then for attendance, we're going to continue flexing. We have these amazing trophies at Northern Lights. First place is about this big, and it's got a man flexing on top. So the school that has the classroom that has the best attendance percentage for the month, we get the trophies. So we got first place, second place, and third place, and the flexing trophies carries a lot of weight with our kids. They want those trophies.
So where do they get their competitive nature from?
I have no idea. And then we're also working on celebrating with our pop-up parties. We want to have fun. We want to celebrate what's going well. So classrooms that have perfect attendance or improved attendance, we're really celebrating that. And we really want to make sure the families and the kids know it's okay to miss school. Life happens. So we're not penalizing anybody for missing, but we are celebrating when our percentage increases. So those are our action steps moving forward up through March 8th, and then we'll identify what we want to focus on after. Questions? Stuff.
Are you guys starting to talk about transitioning some of the families in?
That's, yeah. Brooke, I'm glad you brought that up. So Northern Lights participates in an event called Snow Club, where we partner with Spear Mountain and we take kids up to Spear Mountain to learn how to ski or snowboard. We just finished session 1, and we actually invited all of the incoming families to participate that had kids of grades 3 through 5. And we did have 3 families participate. At 5 o'clock today, there's an invite going out to all of our new families for our Winterfest family celebration that is this Wednesday. So far, we've had over 300 people RSVP for this family event on Wednesday, so that's very exciting. And then Snow Club Session 2, we're inviting our new families in. And then more formally as a district, we've started some meetings on what we're going to do during the day and after school to just help those kids feel like they can come and be part of our community, our community.
David's helping to coordinate transition team with all the principals, parent involvement coordinators. They're trying to come up with some events that are consistent so that,
We've got
some consistency.
Well, yeah, and I think there's some good ideas that came up at our last meeting, so.
Good.
What else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want this back?
We will move on to our committee agendas then. Our first committee agenda is personnel negotiations. Ms. Taylor.
All right. I've got 2 action items tonight. The first is administration recommends approval of the February 2024 new hires and separations report.
Motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just think it's important to recognize some of the retirements that we have up there, many years of service to our district.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Second action item is administration recommends renewal of the administrator contracts for the 24-25 school year.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Can I just share a couple updates? You'll just notice the difference with 3 positions. Obviously with Mr. Flaherty's retirement, like Superior, that position is not on here. You'll also notice that our assistant director position for special education is not on there. We're going to be replacing that position, we hope, with a lead teacher or coordinator who can support teachers at the building level with developing behavior plans and writing IEPs. And then the 3rd position, we've eliminated the DEI director position. Carrie will be in the middle school as a middle school assistant principal. The goal is that that work continues at some capacity with her expertise and ability to help lead some of that from the middle school, but we haven't worked out those details yet. So you'll see that we're down 3 FTE on this.
Will that get a different name then for Carrie? Is it going to include some diversity, equity?
Yeah, the hope is that she can help lead some of the DEI work that we've been doing in our district. Like, for example, she sent out a great email today with some resources for Black History Month and being able to continue some of those things.
Right. Is there any further discussion?
Is there any changes with the director of early childhood and family education with losing 3K in that?
We met actually, like I'm looking around the room, we met last week to talk a little bit about what Jen's role is going to look like and how that'll look different. I see Jen taking on some responsibilities with some of the DEI work, as well as taking on some other things from some of our other directors. So that will look a little bit different, but we're working through those details right now. Anything you want to say, Will? Anything else I should mention? Okay. Okay.
A little bit later too.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, good question.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I have no discussion items and no informational items. Well, that ends my report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next, Operations Committee. I think I'm taking that one. Forgot I put my name on. That was short. There are no action items. There are no discussion items, informational items. Mr. Pat Gillen, Transportation Department update. And the look twice.
Not working. Oh.
Lady, I don't know. Oh, well. When was that start? Well,
Yeah.
It was fine.
So, well, hello, I'm Pat Gillen, and I wanted to point out that this is what we're missing this year. This was a storm from last year, and as you can see, I prefer not having it as we go forward. So, and that's our fearless leader from that year, running inside to get away from the weather as everyone's.
Although if I remember right, last time you said something about there being no snow, it snowed that night. So
One major incident this year.
you should be careful.
Careful tonight.
We did have a restorative conversation.
It's clear out there.
I'm sure I won't hear anything about it if there's a storm next week.
Right. Be quite dramatic watching.
Yeah.
So I did put this on at high speed as we can watch it and go through the route, but as for the department itself, we have 23 full-time drivers and we have 3 part-time drivers and 6 sped aides, 2 of them being part-time as well. What we can do with that, the part-time drivers, is we can mix and match and we can get them an extra route in addition to our sped aides as well. We currently have 26 routes. 21 of those are general education routes and 5 of them are special education routes. For equipment, we have 37 buses. We have 13 diesel and 24 propane. I'd like to keep the split right now at 60% propane, 40% diesel. We're a little bit high right now on the propane, but as we go forward, we'll even it out.
Can you explain why?
Fuel cost. Right now, I think diesel's usually hovers around over $4 a gallon. We have a contract with Como, we get $1.09. It's about 3 to 1. About 1 gallon diesel equals to about 3 gallon of propane, but it is a significant savings.
And why wouldn't we have all propane?
because you don't want a single fuel source. So as you'll.
These are all questions I get. I'm just prompting. Yes.
So we have, especially in the cold, you'll never see electric buses in this area because it can't, at this point in time, it can't take the cold. And in addition, propane, the fueling stations do not act very well. So we will have problems when it's really cold, and we don't want everything going through that one fuel source. So the average age of our buses right now is at 6 years, and the average mileage is 106,000.
Per bus, on a bus, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
At what point do
Yeah.
you retire the bus?
We don't have a set mileage date. It's more of, okay, this is a significant thing we need to repair. As things get older, they retire and become sub buses. And so this is what if main bus is down, that's what they'll roll into and work on that. And then if there's a significant fix, then they'll get
Gotcha.
sent off. So in terms of support, we have Fabric Garage, which houses the majority of our buses. And we have a great relationship with them. We are actually able to park our buses in a secure compound, and we have two mechanics that are on call 24/7, and we don't pay for that. I cannot stress how much that is a savings, and we have a very good deal with them. And they recognize it, but they care just as much as the two mechanics care just as much about the drivers while keeping the buses on the road. We also work well with Voyager. Currently, they do 2 of our PM routes. And we have an excellent relationship with them. We haven't had to, but I know that if I needed help, I could call and they would send a bus over and help us whatever I needed. We do have a spot at the Mariner Mall. We keep a couple buses there. We also keep our transit van, which it's a sped transit van, but if it's not being used, other people in the school can use it for any field trips or anything like that. We do have to keep it in secure compound mainly for we'll lose the catalytic converters, so that's why they're kept there. The fueling, so we have for the propane, we have the middle school, which is where all the propane buses, the majority of them will get filled up. That's where we have the largest tank. We also have one at Four Corners gas station. It's a much smaller tank, but the one at Four Corners is a backup in case the middle school. So this is our for technology, and this was actually this same route when it was getting close to Four Corners.
Oh, wow.
A little bit of sarcasm.
The same, you're saying it's the same day?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's always nicer out there. So right now we have, this is something that Dave set up that when I came here just blew me away. We have what is called the Spark Map. And with that, we've gone pretty much paper free. And so every bus before it's done, driven each day, they have to do a trip. Previously, they'd have to go through the checklist, go through it, mark it off, keep papers. We'd have to track and file and see if they can do it. But this, they have a checklist, they go through, they select what they've done, and then they scan their bus to know that they did the correct bus and they submit it to us. So we are truly paperless. So I can go back and see what someone's done for the pre-trips since we started this. Also on that Spark map, they can get any document that they need that usually different school calendars or what order do I park in at the middle school, things like that. Everything, they don't have to call us, they can get it directly. It's really great. The other thing is, or another app on there is we have our student route info. I use that all the time. When I'm over at the middle school, anyone that's coming by, any student that doesn't know how to get home, I don't have to call the office. I can just plug in the name, tells the route, send them right on their way. Saves a lot of time. Another thing that we've also set up here, you'll be watching this. This is our dash cam. This is kind of a scary situation. I get a lot of these every day, but this is something that helps us track us this. As these students are walking by, there's a stop arm that's out. They just drive right on by.
Minnesota license plate.
So with this now, this is kind of our homegrown. They're a lot more expensive than if they're sold to us. We've been able to just probably together our resources and come up with a dash cam ourselves and work with the police department, because once I'll share the footage with them, they can look up their license plate either with the county or the Superior Police Department, and they will go and issue them a ticket. And it's impossible. I think it's personally impossible to expect the driver to be able to catch that the license plate as they're driving by, because they're watching their students, they're
Yeah.
not watching. So I just use that as a highlight of what can happen. The last thing is GPS parent portal. That's not something we've rolled out yet, but it will be soon. With that, it's mainly for the rural routes. As a bus gets in, say, you could set this predetermined, let's say within a half a mile, a text will go out to the parents, say, hey, bus is here, send your student out. So there's some concerns with privacy on that we're working through. That's why it's not out yet, but we hope to get that out this year. This is the team. We did do the haunted bus again. We had 4 different locations this year. And what I want to highlight for this is how excellent everyone works together. If there's an issue that happens, you'll often hear it on the radio. I don't have to say anything. If there's a problem, they just work it out amongst themselves, and they always want to make sure that no one's forgotten. They're very protective of their students. If they ever hear something that's going on, they'll get me involved so that I can reach out to a counselor or student, just check it out, see them. Good. Any questions?
Yeah.
I think you upped the game on presentations. So.
Transportation always.
I don't know. There was the rock band. What was that? Yeah.
All right, thanks, Pat.
And now do I say, that concludes my report, Mr. President?
Yes, you do.
Yes. Move on to the Budget and Insurance Committee. Mr. Nichols.
I have a couple action items for gifts, grants and requests. The administration recommended accept gifts, grants and bequests received January 2024.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Second action item is district calendar instructional day adjustment. Administration recommends adding instructional minutes to the day and reducing the number of student school days starting with the 2025-26 calendar as a way to reduce annual operational costs. The board may also consider eliminating snow days that are built into the school year starting with the 25-26 school calendar as an additional cost savings to the district.
This one came up because
So let's get a,
Motion approved.
Second.
Any other discussion?
All right, Dave.
so this one came up after Crystal's work on what we're gonna do with Jack and and it shows that we go later in the school year than most school districts do. And it's just a matter of adding some minutes to the days is gonna have significant savings. When we're going down there, we're gonna look under every rock to find savings. And this one seems like it's a pretty easy one to hit on. $38,000 or something is an estimate on what we save per day. So cutting that down by 4 days is a significant savings. I'm only on board on those snow days too, but I know that was gonna be up for the ones that just like the morning.
I have some of the data here that I can just kind of share. So first of all, one of the things we recognized when we were looking at the literacy training and potentially reducing some instructional days this school year was, and we knew this, but as we dig deeper, it allowed us to problem solve this. So we have more elementary instructional days than are required as compared to the secondary. So that's what allowed us to be able to reduce those 2 days at the elementary. We wouldn't have been able to do that at the secondary because we don't exceed those required minutes at the secondary level. So we, like David said, we're trying to look at creative ways to make some cost reductions. I know neighboring districts have considered some of these in recent years as well. And like David said, I have some other school districts here, we're one of the later districts that gets out in the school year, and we all start, about the same time. We did the math, and so a proposal we have is that if we added 7 instructional minutes to the elementary and 10 instructional minutes at the secondary level, that equates to that 4 days that we are required to have by DPI standards. Because we already start late at the elementary, our proposal was to add those minutes to the beginning of the day. So we start 7 minutes earlier. And our proposal at the secondary, which is driven mostly by transportation, because we have half of our fleet go to the middle school and half of our fleet go to the high school to pick up, and then they switch. So it impacts transportation. So our proposal there is 5 minutes at the beginning of the day and 5 minutes at the end of the day. You know, a lot of schools that I looked at, you know, their elementary, for example, starts at 8:30 and goes to 3:30. Ours starts almost at 9 and goes to 3:30. So by adding just a few minutes, that actually has a significant impact over the course of a whole year. So we thought we had an obligation to bring that forward as a potential idea for cost savings. We would see savings because we would not be providing food or transportation services. Support staff would obviously not be days. It could be an opportunity for us to add a day, at least for the high school, between semesters for grading and planning for second semester classes. At the elementary and at the middle school, there's also an opportunity to look at benchmark assessments that happen in the winter. So we give PLC time to look at their data. And then we talk about what those other days could potentially look like outside of probably this time and space. Going back to David's point, I mean, I think we have an obligation to also have the board consider whether we're going to continue with our traditional snow days. A lot of school districts just do virtual snow days. We pay all of our support staff when we don't have school. And so each day that we don't have school, that we're paying staff, that is about $38,000 a day that it costs to pay staff when we don't have school because of virtual snow days. Now, partly the reason we do that is because that's a hardship for support staff, especially if we had 2 snow days back to back, but that's 2 days without pay. That's already in the budget. So I think it's just important to be transparent that that is another place where we're spending money when it comes to calendar. If I keep that, that's fine, but I just wanted to know that.
I think to eliminate the only two, because didn't we reduce it? Did it used to be more than 2 or has it always been?
Oh, it's been 2 since I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah.
2.
Like not every child has the support or can do the virtual days at home.
Mhm.
So if we eliminate the snow days, you know, where they don't have to do work, then that potentially puts them behind 2 days too. So hear what I'm saying there?
Yeah, and we try to be really accommodating on those days.
Yeah, I think
There's
everyone-
like older siblings who have to take care of younger siblings or, yeah,
Yeah, I think everyone is. I think it's just probably not as effective as being in the classroom.
for sure.
Yeah. So to miss out on, you know, maybe 2 snow days that are excused and then have 2 virtual days, you know, essentially that's 4 days if we were to change those into virtual days as well.
Is the support staff pay the biggest savings there?
Yeah, that's where you
That's
gain the
awesome.
savings because you'd have less days of operations. It's operational reductions.
There be logistical things as far as students and their computers for those virtual days, because they don't bring their
They
computers
try to
home.
predict it.
They do.
They send them.
They try to predict it.
Yeah.
And we have been 100% successful, but I'm not guaranteeing that's always going to be the case. It is a significant stressor.
Yeah.
Hope we don't have to worry about that this
Yeah.
year.
I mean, I always hear mixed emotions about the snow days situation. Sometimes I hear we only have 2, and then sometimes it's the virtual is sufficient enough. And so I don't know what the answer is for it.
Yeah, and we're obviously good with whatever decision we make tonight or this week or next week, but I just thought it was important I bring that to you as additional information.
Is there any reasons like why we wouldn't want to add time to the day that you've heard or that you?
Or some people will come up with some reasons. Yeah, it is hard. You know, the longer the day, it's harder for teachers, especially at the elementary level. And so it gets to just be a longer day.
Would they distribute I'm trying to think for middle and high school.
At the secondary, I don't want to speak for the principals who aren't here, but I'm looking at Kate. Kate, there she is. I'm assuming we would add like a minute to each period and then some to advisory or.
Yeah.
We can't add it to lunch because there's limitations around that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
It has less of an impact when you only have kids for a minute longer each
Mhm.
hour.
Sure.
versus the elementary school.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you'd have them for an extra
Absolutely.
7.
Experience that.
Yep.
And we've done that before. Yeah. That's the feedback I've received in the past mostly from elementary when we've had to add minutes to try to make it up for snow days. It's to be a long day. But like I said, we're one of the shorter days compared to other districts.
And then they just get out sooner.
Correct.
How will this affect contracts and things? Are we able to?
That's to be determined.
Okay.
Yep.
I think my biggest thing behind this is just making sure we hear from, in particular, teachers and staff that this actually affects, hopefully before next week.
Sure.
You know, if it affects family members, I don't know that it would as much, but for sure, hearing from the teachers who it affects the most before next week.
Is there any additional information you'd like me to bring forward for next week?
Do we have the savings for those
Oh, I didn't say
days,
that.
not just snow days?
The total savings for 4 days would equal approximately 152,000 a year. That's a recurring savings. If we added the 2 additional snow days, it totals over 225,000 for the year. So. And remember, I mean, we've kind of been using the number of about 1 teacher, including salary and benefits, equates to about 100,000. So that's potentially 2 FTEs.
That's significant.
And that's just eliminating the operational costs. The para support staff.
Well, help me understand the 10-minute.
So what'd you think?
It's a 7-hour day at the high school, so why wouldn't we just do the 7 minutes at the high schools all across?
Because they have a different requirement for DPI.
Hours are different.
Right. I mean,
It doesn't, if we only did 7 minutes, we wouldn't get to the total.
so then the 3 minutes, where are we going to include that?
Well, I don't want to speak for the principals, but you could add it to advisory or,
I think you could distribute 1 minute. Period.
can we though?
I don't think you can go beyond the 30, if I remember the law on that.
It depends on where it's tied to.
Passing time is where you can add
You
it.
can include 1 passing time, but not 2 passing times. It's really fun.
Yeah.
It's a very specific formula we have to follow by DPI.
But for an individual period, we're looking at probably just a minute.
Correct.
To 1 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that they can incorporate that. I mean, and when you think about it too, over the course of the year, there are other things that impact the total number of instructional minutes. So I think, you know, we're kind of just scratching the surface. I think many schools do many different things. And again, we're doing this to stay, the proposal is still to stay where we have the same calendar for elementary and secondary. But as we saw this year, when we do that, our elementary minutes were well over.
Far exceed the requirement.
Which in all reality, 4K sometimes start different times, kindergarten, middle school has.
We've had flexibility to do it at those levels because we have this. We wouldn't necessarily have the ability to have staggered starts.
Sure.
To the same level.
But I mean, parents are used to kind of having it not all line up perfectly.
Right, yeah.
So the 225,000 is operational costs, which is also support staff.
Savings include no food or transportation services provided on those days, as well as a reduction of school year support staff who would not work on that day.
And we don't know how it affects contracted employees.
You would be deciding that after this. Remember, this is not for next school year. We already have the calendar set for next school year, so this would be, if the board would like to see this change happen, this would be language that we would bring to you in the April handbook, so that when we do the calendar next fall, we have that language built in to draft the calendar. Does that make sense?
25,
For
20.
25, 26. We can't do that now because the current language doesn't allow us to do that.
So right now, we're just deciding this. Later, it will be the contract.
Correct.
Related to this.
Right.
Dave, how deep are you going into the budget coming up here?
Deep in that?
Yeah,
Not too
like surface level? Okay.
I mean, we'll reiterate some of the messages we've been sharing with staff, I think, but
So I don't know, I'll just say, I think it's important to recognize though, 225,000 is a lot of money. With budget issues that Dave will touch on the surface. You know, I'd rather see stuff like this, lower our deficit versus terminating positions. I think that's what it kind of boils down to, so. That's my 2 cents for that. I think the 230,000 will go far in comparison to what could happen.
The positive part, it's a reoccurring cost, so it affects our annual budget. It's not just a one-time cost.
And I'm hoping we'll do just fine without snow days this year.
I hope to.
You should be better this year too, with snow removal.
Sitting great right now.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We're gonna get it.
Oh, don't say that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. One discussion item. The second Friday in January pupil count.
No, it's just moving it forward to next week. Yeah, it's just moving it for discussion. Nothing was approved tonight. It's just to approve it to talk about next week. Okay. All right, and next was,
Yeah, pupil count.
Dave, were you gonna talk about this or do you need me to?
Do you want to click? Yeah.
Nope,
yeah.
that one, yep.
So every year we have two different counts. We have our third Friday count and our second Friday count. This is our second Friday count. This number really drives our equalization aid. So out of which is more important, it's that third Friday count that happens here. One of these days I want to be able to come up here and have good news, but it isn't today, or it isn't today. We came under 4,000 on head count. That's not a good thing to see. The majority are, the ones we lost some pre-K because of the Superior Center couldn't cover our teacher. We lost some high schoolers. That's when kids that graduated early. We had some that dropped out. And then from the middle school, we had some, if a kid's in treatment and they're not in school for the week before or the week after, then we can't count those kids. So that kind of pulls those numbers down.
Christy, can you make it just a little bit bigger?
So overall, I mean, the numbers are kind of expected. This is kind of what we're looking at. It's going to tie into the budget when I talk about the budget a little bit later. But again, the biggest thing is the drop, and this is the trend we're heading down. Doesn't take into consideration our open enrollment numbers. And this number you're seeing right here, this 3987, this isn't the number that drives our budget as for our revenue limit, because that involves a 3-year average, open enrollment in, open enrollment out, multiple different factors. It's just, this is kind of the number. This is your head count. This is how many butts are in the seats, and you've seen it trickle down. So,
But it will eventually, because it will average out if we keep going down.
for sure.
Can I ask, what was our first one? I don't remember the total. Do you remember? 4,021?
So one good thing that, I think staff are seeing in the district is how important these numbers are. I did have somebody from the Secretary of Four Corners reach out to me saying, hey, I'm working on this kid. I'm going to find this kid. Just give me a day and I can get this kid. They understand how important it is to get these numbers to be correct. And they're out there hounding parents, hey, when you coming in, we need you to really come in. This is a very important day. So we're seeing the fruits that are laid on that side of it. So I'm really glad to see that. I think it's just going to be more out there so staff understand how important it is to get those numbers in. So.
You said something about semester grads. So this is the second Friday in January. And then our semester didn't end until at least a week later, I believe. So would those kids be from the fall that didn't graduate with the class of 23, and maybe some got their work done like October, November, whatever, some online kids, things like that.
Had a few Cheeto kids that.
I would check out. So, yeah. I think that's more informational for all of us here too, because we do have different ways that kids graduate from the school. So I think it's important to note that. And then in that count though, there's something about cohorts. So that group of kids from 23.
You can see them on here too. The 10th grade class.
Large one,
373.
73.
Right, but I mean, last year's group, let's say the class of 2023, and I was in that course, I was in that class, but I didn't graduate until October. Where am I counted? Where am I counted? Am I counted back with my 23 group or am I counted into my 23, 24?
The state doesn't publish the graduation data until the year following, typically December of the year following. So
Okay.
within that calendar year, typically you would be attached to the graduation class.
Still,
Yes, that you,
Right.
so we, that's why often we can't celebrate our graduation rates until almost we already have another graduating class. So the state holds that information in for quite a while.
okay. I couldn't quite remember that one.
Informational items, David.
So these are just the normal, we're going over the revenue. One good thing is, January 16th, we got a nice bump in our, taxes came in, a portion of it, 2.5 million. I know it was less than this. But now we're just waiting on the big, my estimate is $1.5 that's gonna hit at the end of this month, with another payment on the tax side. Which is, we need, because our revenue's getting down there again. As you look at the revenue side, we're about halfway through the year, we're running 17.5 million on a budget of 60 million. So that's where, again, cash flow kind of gets messed up. So, on the expense side, again, we're on par to, hit budget or become close on budget. So there's still a lot of variables. It's part of the budget process that we're working through too, where big thing I'm pushing with departments is any money that we save this year, we can put into fund balance, which then can help us for next year if we end up running into a deficit, depending on what happens next year. Also the ESSER money, we're taking we're looking at ESSER money and how we're going to really use that as a strategy to use that money properly that maximizes it. There is this little window we have after June 30th where we can spend some of that money. So that's what I've been working with Crystal and other departments where, hey, if I can get this bill that hits in July, I can use that ESSER money, but we have that September thing, hard date, you need to spend on that. You will spend, you will have $0 left on ESSER money to maximize that. So. Then a budget update. So all I do is have meetings pretty much every single day with various people. And it usually goes with, they tell me how much money they find it and they say find more. We're heading in the right direction. We're trending in the right direction. Figure out a solution. We're looking at all the options that are out there, depending on, not only reducing expenses, increasing revenue. The number is still significant. The number is still big, but I'm confident we're going to be able to get to, close to zero. Again, a big thing I always want to reiterate is running a deficit isn't bad if it's a planned deficit. That's the reason that we kept putting money into our fund balance is for those days. That's our savings account. If we run a planned deficit next year, then that's perfectly fine. But it's those unplanned deficits that we need to ensure that we don't hit. And then also it's not a sustainable thing. So
We were intentional about building that fund balance, knowing that we were going to have the fiscal cliff of no longer having ESSER funds. So it does allow us the opportunity to tap into funds. I call it kind of soften the blow to not having those federal dollars into next year. So that is an option the board can consider.
one thing to watch in April is when the elections are taking place. So I talked to a couple other districts and there's 62 districts going on for operational. It's going to be very interesting because there's a lot of districts that didn't have the foresight, I think, that we had here. That they just kind of stood there in the stand. We'll figure it out when we get there. Well, now they have to figure it out. And some of them are even at a spot where they haven't really worked on next year's budget, banking on a referendum passing. And then they have a week to figure out what they're going to do because after that is teacher renewals deadline. So it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of big districts and small districts that are going out there for significance. So
The recent email we sent out to staff, we shared that we're looking right now at a $4 million reduction when we consider the loss of our ESSER funds and not getting the same amount back in state revenue for next year. That number will look very different depending on what the board decides when it comes to staffing or salary increases, and our health insurance is up also. So that number could look very different depending on our decisions that we make in the next couple of months. Keep those conversations open session so folks hear that.
To the departments have been working with. They've been coming with, with savings and where we can find them, and every little dollar counts. If somebody finds me, $10,000-$15,000, if a bunch of people do that, we get 6 people that can find $15,000, all of a sudden that's the equivalent of a teacher. So that's kind of the way that I've been spinning it, is you're not saving money, you're saving teachers, you're saving people in the classroom.
Down at the WASB convention too, I got to go to a session and it was super eye-opening. They had 2 districts there comparing how they use the formula or the equation for funding and how unequitable it is and how it hurts some districts so bad and helps some. And so those districts that it is sort of helping, they don't want to necessarily speak up and lose their funding. But it's like, we've got to come together here because everybody's struggling. And so we have to keep on advocating for that, which I know I've reached out a few times about it.
And I did share with David, and I think the board, when we were at WASB, as part of one of our legislative updates, there is continued movement for the next school year to potentially increase our reimbursement for special education. So as I learn more about that, I'll keep the board informed. So
yeah, let us know if
that'll have
bend anything out.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Health insurance.
Again, all right. The Health Insurance Advisory Committee, so we had the committee meets. It was preliminary, just got it's a group of about 15 or so employees of the district. We try to get a representation from every school. It went out to everybody, all staff in the district, and if they wanted to join. Healthcare, it's a tough one. Healthcare is extremely expensive. The days of cheap healthcare, fully covered with $250 deductible, $250 max out of pocket, that's gone. It's not there anymore. There's multiple plans, and we have to be smart consumers when we're out there. We work with McLennan Marsh, our insurance broker. We work closely with them, a lot closer than we ever have in the past. So our plan is at the end of March, they're going to get us the bids from at least, right now they've reached out to 5 different insurance companies with the options that they have. What are they going to provide? The original estimate, currently we use a Group Health Trust right now. Group Health Trust estimate they're coming with using the actuaries is a 10.4% increase. When you spend, $5.5 million, 10%. $500,000. So it's significant, the amount it could be. They are going to provide other options. One of the options, and I know it's a rough one that people don't like to hear, is a Medica narrow band insurance, where they are able to contract rates with different healthcare facilities. In this example, would be Essentia Health, where hey, you will go to Essentia Health. They are who's going to be in your network. And they can bring a significant cost savings where you could look at a 10% reduction. That's $1 million swing in that direction, which is huge. That is a huge number for our budget, but it's tough. And I know that's one thing where I want to get the information out to staff when I talk to that insurance community. The big thing that we want that insurance community out there is to relay that information out to their schools, staff can understand. The biggest thing is what I want communicated out to people is, and I understand that myself, Amy, Molly, when we're working through this health insurance stuff, we're trying to do what's best for the district overall. There isn't any big thing we get by transitioning over this other than we're saving teachers' job, bringing the budget down. So it is going to be tough decisions that we need to make. Yeah, so as we get closer, everybody was saying we're going to give us the bids earlier, but the earliest they can get is the end of March, because then we get more data, and we're doing really good this year. So this is the year we wanna hold out as long as we can, because our claims are really down compared to the last couple of years. So that'll bring additional savings to us.
We'll have those bids late March. We'll meet with the advisory committee after that late March, and then we anticipate bringing that information to the board in April. Timeline?
Yep, so board approves who we're gonna go with in April. May is open enrollment, and then insurance starts July 1.
Is there any initial feedback from this advisory committee on what you just said?
It did not really, Darren. I mean, they went out and talked to people, and then other people, I've heard from other people, there is trepidation on the narrow network. That's for sure. But one thing I think of on that side is I used to work for Essentia. So of course Essentia was not gonna let me go to St. Luke's or Mayo or anything like that. Also, we're not gonna come in and say, hey, you can't go to any of these other ones. There will be plans, or the plan will also incorporate, like, you can take this broader based plan, but the premiums are gonna be the responsibility of the employee. So if you really want to go outside the network, you can sign up for a plan, but you're responsible for those premiums, not the school district. So they're going to have that option.
Like the full premium or a difference of what the district would be paying?
So the difference, so we would still contribute, let's say it's $10,000, $20,000 a year, and you pay 80% for that. You will still pay 80%, 20,000. If their plan is 30,000, they're going to be responsible for that 10,000 that's over. It would be costly.
But we're gonna bring all those different options.
Yeah,
And
well,
we'll have all of that.
How was the committee chosen, or how that get formed? Just
Anybody who asked, and there wasn't a lot.
Down where if there's multiple people,
Yeah.
there was a lot of people from the board office, and we narrowed that down.
Okay.
Just on the random selection, but as far as from the schools, we went back out like 3 different times, say, please sign up.
Oh, sure.
Join.
Right.
Just an anecdote from the private sector, we have an essential only plan and a broader plan. And our essential only plan actually went down this year.
That's the
So
two.
we had like a -2% decrease, and the broader plan went up by 3%.
You get that narrow plan to kind of buy your business. The other thing we have going for us is, I know in the past, Medica wouldn't give us even bid on it because like, we know you're not gonna take it. You know, we're not even gonna waste our time. We used our insurance broker to go out to them and say, yes, this is on the table, everything on the table. And also, I mean, the 10% that GHT is thrown at us, they might not think that we're gonna go out and just get as competitive as what it is. They're gonna be fully aware that there's gonna be 4 competition insurance companies bidding for our service. I mean, we have a lot of people here, so
Yeah.
they're gonna want our business.
Yeah. Any other items? Hearing none, that ends my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Next up is the Teaching and Learning Committee. Mr. Schumacher is not here this evening. I'll take his. No action items, no discussion items, informational items. First of all, Crystal Hinsman, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Everybody, I just have 3 quick updates, so you know some things that are going on for us right now. Summer school planning is a couple of months actually underway already. On our website now, under the summer school tab, people can find summer school dates, the locations. So if you look there, you will see that we have downsized to only have 2 elementary sites this summer. We downsized to 3 sites last summer, and we're pleasantly surprised that families still attended summer school. We had a great turnout, even though not all kids got to go to summer school at their home school. So we've downsized to 2. Our 2 sites will be Northern Lights and Cooper. Great Lakes and Northern Lights families will go to Northern Lights. And Four Corners, Bryant and Cooper families will go to Cooper, and Lake Superior families will be able to choose which site is best for their family, depending on what their family needs are. We wanted to give them that option, depending on if they want to go with what's familiar, or maybe some friends that are going to Lakes or to Great Lakes with them next year, or Four Corners or Bryant. Summer school starts, some of our summer school programming starts June 10th at our high school. And then the rest of the summer school programming starts Monday, June 17th. We again won't have summer school on Fridays, the week of the 4th of July. And all of our programming throughout our schools is the same offerings as we've had in the past. Summer school application to teach and work summer school will go out later this month. And then registration for families to sign up for summer school will start in the middle of April. So middle of April to usually the middle of May is kind of our registration timeframe. So that's summer school. The NOAA grant. So NOAA stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I just wanted you to be aware that UW-Superior has been awarded a 2-year grant to partner with some agencies. They would like to partner with us, the Maple School District, the Hayward School District, and the 4-H agency from Minnesota to bring some climate resiliency projects to our middle schoolers. So it would be some middle schoolers from the 3 districts I mentioned, and some also partnering with 4-H in Minnesota. Our science teachers at the middle school will be part of some professional development, and it would just offer some cool projects for our middle schoolers. So UWS is going to be the fiscal agent for the grant, and they're going to do a press release coming up soon. So I just wanted you to hear that we're excited about the opportunity. We had our first meeting with them last week. And then last, we have our staff development days coming up on February 15th and 16th. I sent the schedule out to our teachers today. There'll be a combination of subject area committee and grade level meetings and also some building time. But then one of the things we're really excited about is on the afternoon of February 15th, we're going to have some implicit bias training for all of our teaching staff, led by Jebba Edmonds. Carrie Saunders has been working on getting that set up and doing a great job. We're excited. And then at our high school, we're going to be offering choice sessions that afternoon around equity and inclusion topics. So our staff continue to say when we ask for their feedback and surveys about staff development that they do want at least one opportunity for some choice during the school year. So we'll be providing that on that afternoon. I think that's it. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
That's Kate Test, Director of Continuous Improvement and Assessment.
I'm here with the update for the AGR mid-year update. Statute requires that we give you an update mid-year on our, I feel like at this point I should quiz you on what AGR stands for, but I will throw you along. Achievement gap reduction. It is the small, it's also known as kind of the small class size grant. We receive funding, and as per that funding, we're required, the principals put together a kind of a spreadsheet tracking student achievement data from fall to winter to spring for grades K1, 2, 3. And so just as an overview for you, after our winter benchmark data, I know the principals will be sharing as they come and talk through kind of their continuous improvement plans. But we, on this AGR report that the principals submit building by building, we don't do at a district level report. The strategies that the principals have chosen are making sure that we have instructional coach support for teachers, that there are places where we on occasion have a class size under 18. That used to kind of be the standard, but it is no longer, and it's not a requirement of the grant. And then we also have instructional tutoring as an option, which we utilize through our reading and math small group instruction. The assessments that we are measuring at each building according to AGR, in kindergarten, we're measuring letter sounds and decodable words, and then number identification and number sequencing. In first grade, we're measuring decodable words and sight words. We're measuring decomposing numbers and place value for math. And then in second and third grade, we're using the adaptive A reading and A math assessments. That all of those pieces come from FastBridge. So it's kind of a second layer to the continuous improvement plans. We have seen some really nice growth from fall to winter. We're seeing some trends kind of district-wide by grade level, by building. So I've been working with principals more specifically on their building data, but just in terms of a statute, wanted to give you an update. We're on track with all of them. Any questions?
Next up, Jen Willoughby, Director of Early Childhood and Family Education.
Just a really quick update for you. So 4K enrollment begins tomorrow. We always start the first Tuesday in February. So tomorrow's the big day. It'll all open online, usually about 8 a.m. So we've been getting a lot of phone calls to our office the past couple of weeks, just with information, parents looking for info. I've been also in contact with the YMCA. They are going to kind of take over our RAP care program within our buildings for the 4K students. So we're very excited about that. Families have been notified. Information's on our website. So we've also had some families already sign up for that. So that's been well received and on its way. And next month, just a follow-up from what Danielle was sharing about transition. Next month, I'll come and talk about kindergarten transition, but we're also working closely with the principals and David Coy in planning our K transition efforts to make sure that we're in collaboration with what all the schools are doing for transition this year. Exciting things. Any questions?
Certainly happy that the YMCA
Yes.
I
is
am.
partnering with us. The two schools, Cooper and Bryant, right now.
To start. They're also planning to have a teacher at the Y next year as well. We had a year where they couldn't get a teacher lined up, and unfortunately they weren't able to be a partner. So they're very excited about being able to offer 4K again, and so they'll offer RAP there as well. So with the YMCA as a partner site, they wanted to fill up those 3 locations first before opening it up. But if they fill those and the need is there, we will look at Northern Lights as well.
So when you say a partner or YMCA pick it up, do we contract with YMCA or is it like just an agreement? Verbal agreements?
Yeah, so there are quite a few things that we're kind of collaborating with them on. And so we'll have some sort of agreement that will
We type
set
up
with them.
an agreement. Yeah.
Fiscally responsibility.
Yeah, they'll take on the charging and collection of the tuition. They'll take on the staffing. They inquired whether they could use our building space, which makes sense for families and students. So that will absorb that cost for our district, which is.
Is it year by year or
What's that?
is it year by year or have we had an agreement for X amount of years?
It would be a year by year agreement. They've provided RAP care. I mean, we've had partnerships like this in the past. Before COVID, they used to oversee our before school program. But then during COVID, they weren't able to staff it. And so we ended up absorbing that. Jen's actually reached out to them again saying, now that you're doing the preschool RAP care, are you thinking about maybe you'd be willing to take on that morning supervision again? Yeah, so that's another
The way they
question.
be here.
Yeah.
So
But again, it comes down to staffing.
does that, so it will be before school and then until the end of the day. So
Be open and available for preschool or 4-year-old students before school from 7 until 8:40, 8:50 when they go to 4K, and then 11:30, and they'll stay open until 5.
So does that mean there's a room, like there's another room for those afternoon kids that are doing, okay, so then they need 2 classrooms.
We use the same classrooms that we're currently using for 3K and our, so those classrooms.
They're there. Yeah.
Yeah, so whoever's doing RAP care will basically be in the morning, or they can be both, I guess.
I don't know how they're gonna work staffing. They might have different staff that come early in the morning and then go to the Y to work throughout the rest of the day.
Sure.
And different staff that just come in for the afternoon. I don't quite know. She did ask if there's any staff at the district level that are, maybe helping out in morning 4K and looking for afternoon work that we don't staff for the whole day, if we could send them their way for afternoon if they'd like to pick up more hours, but be paid through the YMCA. So that's an option that we can definitely share with our support staff.
Is there,
A lot of happy families.
yes. Is there any preference given to the ones that do need the RAP care? Because obviously we want to keep those 4K students in district. And I know it's even hard as a stay-at-home mom, that morning blip is even hard to drop off and pick up. You can't get much done in that time. So is there preference given for the families who genuinely need the RAP care?
Yes.
Okay.
So at Cooper and at Bryant, our morning classes are given preference for students who need that RAP care in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then we'll have morning options for families, assuming we don't need to offer wrap at Northern Lights. We'd have morning 4K option for families at Northern Lights and then also Great Lakes, because we don't offer any wrap there. And then Cathedral and the YMCA will have a morning program. So there will
Our
be
number is going to depend too. I know sometimes we've had 4K teachers that have only been at one school in the morning and another school. Is it all dependent on numbers?
number dependent. So,
Yeah.
correct. In the next couple of weeks, we should have at least a preliminary guess of how things will shake out.
Families have to do full-time rep care or no rep care? Or can they do certain days?
The Y, I believe, is only offering 5 days a week. Like it's just a weekly.
I think for
fee.
staffing, that's what you need.
One
It's too hard to piece.
Yep. And so families can certainly choose, like I only need wrap care 3 days a week, but they would pay the same fee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks for wrapping that up.
What you did there.
And you really wanted to be here tonight, right? Next is our Policies and Rules Committee. Mr. Gallagher.
All right, everybody thought we were rolling through this quick. We're on policies now. All right, I have several policies for tonight. Administration proposes approval of changes to the following policies based on Neola recommendations in order to be in compliance with state and or federal law updates. I'll need a motion and a second for each individual policy, just as a reminder. So the first policy is the first reading of policy 2460.03, independent educational evaluation.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just want to reiterate, these are all Neola recommendations. We're still plugging through the recommendations. I was trying to find my data. We've approved a lot of policies since about September, so.
So these are consistent with what they're recommending to.
Yep. Unless you see, any other changes in there, but anytime there's policy, I always run it by admin or directors so that they know what we're bringing forward.
All right, any discussion on this policy? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Next one, first reading of policy 2700.01, school performance and state accountability report cards.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has second. Any discussion? Anybody? No. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one's first reading of policy 1213, student supervision and welfare for admin.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just that we've tried to make sure those three policies are similar, so the language is consistent between those three employee groups.
Amy, one question I have, so we can scroll down to number 6 or scroll up. An administrator shall not disclose personally identifiable information about a student to third parties unless specifically authorized by law or the student's parents to do so. What happens when the student turns 18? That student,
This is regarding, let's say, I actually just addressed this question this week from an administrator. So let's say the child lives with an aunt, but the parent has legal guardian, or the parent is the legal guardian. You have to, you can't disclose information to that aunt, even if they're emergency contact or they live with the child. So you can only disclose like attendance, behavior, those kinds of things can really only be disclosed to the parent. That's what that is specifically referring to. You would also, even if the student was over 18, you wouldn't disclose information about that child to somebody who's, your question is if they're a parent.
or if I'm the
Yeah.
student now that turned 18, I don't want.
We still disclose information to parents. Yeah. That changes when they go to higher ed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're 18 and they say it's okay to tell my aunt this information, they can't
We typically would need written
In writing.
from the parent.
Yeah. I want it from the parent and the student, probably in that case.
Any other discussion on this policy? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Next one is first reading policy 3213, student supervision and welfare, professional level.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Any discussion?
All these are basically the same.
Yep.
Those three, yeah. All right, hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carries. Next one is first reading policy. Somebody put their cursor right over my number.
I think it's 421B.
Who can I blame? Christie? Very good.
4213.
4213.
4213, student supervision and welfare support staff.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one is first reading of policy 3120.04, employment of substitutes.
Move to approve.
A motion is second. Any discussion?
Just that this is consistent with what we are currently doing. Molly helped to make sure those revisions are aligned to our current practices. Anything you want to say about that, Molly?
I'm gonna ask you a question then.
Well, I mean, it was stated that you could pick the licensure, which is not.
That's not a thing, yeah.
Yeah. So,
So Molly, what's possesses appropriate certification, just for general knowledge?
what they need for a sub teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they either need a teaching license or they can do a 3-year or a 5-year sub teaching license
Thank you.
through the Wisconsin DPI, not through me.
All right, any other discussion on this one? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it passes. Moving on. First reading policy 8146, notification of educational options.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Next one, first reading of policy 8740, protection of district funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. All right, next one, first reading of, where's that cursor? First reading of policy 9130, public requests, suggestions, or complaints. This one has two options for consideration. So maybe we just
First.
I get a motion in a second.
Motion to what though? Approve one of them?
Motion to discuss.
Well, so
We have to pick one.
just
Just to get
pick one for-
discussion going forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
So their motion in a second.
we need a motion in a second.
Motion.
Second.
Which
We
option?
gotta, we have to pick
Pick
the
it up.
option.
Pick it up.
Steve.
Picking up.
I don't want.
I know, I don't.
You can change your opinion.
I'll make a motion to pick option number 2.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we got a motion in a second. Let's discuss this properly.
Okay, can I just give a little bit of context
Yes.
for everybody? So policy 9130 and policy 2522 are closely connected. So that's why you see them both there. I have shared an option for both policies with you that includes an option to not have a committee. With about 2 years ago, we had a public complaint. That complaint process, which is outlined within the option number 1, requires that we work with the principal and myself to develop a committee of a variety of people, including teachers and administrators and parents. Because it's a committee of the board that has to be notified within a public notice, which then requires, it can create an opportunity for people to observe the committee discussion and the committee meeting. feedback I got from teachers when we did this a couple years ago was that was really hard. And so, if there's continues to be an opportunity in here for the complainant to appeal the decision to the board, I put in here an option number 2 is to eliminate the committee, because I'll be honest, like if I have another curriculum complaint, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find teachers and administrators who want to sit on that committee. I mean, we have that legal requirement for that public notice piece. So my suggestion would be that whatever you do for 9130, you probably should do for 2522, because the process should probably be the same. And Jody's here, and when you get to policy 2522, I've worked closely with the teacher librarians, Jody's being our lead, because this is a new policy that we don't have that kind of maps out those procedures as well. So she's also here. That I'll stop.
I think the reality is, whether you have a committee or not, someone's passionate about it, it's gonna get all the way to the board anyhow. So might as well just skip all the middle stuff and go right to the board. Second, if we do have a committee and a committee makes a opinion or judgment call and maybe the board goes a different way, it would be hard for the board to go against the committee they put together.
I guess my request would be if we do continue to have a committee, that somehow we need to support those teachers and administrators who are on that committee so they feel supported.
This doesn't take away the fact that if it comes to the board is still presented with all the information that a committee would have. Is just right to the board, similar to last time.
It was appealed immediately, so it came to the board. Right. And I can speak to that as well.
Right.
It was very difficult to be involved with that particular process, knowing that teachers were sitting there and their opinion may have been scrutinized to such a degree that all of the public really didn't know where they were coming from. I think that that's very unfair to our teaching staff in this district, as well as to our administrators that had to, our one administrator that just go through that. I also think that the presentation that you presented, Crystal, I think that puts you kind of in a light as well, where people really didn't understand totally what was going on and stuff. So I concur with you completely that it's going to come to us, and there's no sense putting people through that experience again.
I think and everybody still has the opportunity to email us and give us their opinion.
Correct.
We can take that into account with like everything else.
Right.
Again, every complaint would still have the same information coming to us. The meeting would still be open to the public. The public could still speak on it. Anybody can speak on it.
Right.
So the only thing you're really taking out is the staff having to deal with it.
The other change with policy 9130 is they've consolidated all of, if there's a staff complaint, into one process, regardless of what employee group that person is in. So you just see they streamlined it into a consistent process.
I remember what I was gonna ask you about that, Amy.
Okay.
So one paragraph says only those items that are appropriate for consideration under this policy will be considered. Mike, one question on that sentence in general is.
Which paragraph are you in?
2, 3, 4, first page, fourth paragraph,
Okay,
right after the red
okay.
lining.
Only those, yep.
So who deems appropriate for consideration and what is deemed appropriate for consideration according to that line? First page.
First page, fourth paragraph in the middle.
I was just looking at the first paragraph.
Generally,
request.
I was just looking to see if the first question kind of defined how you use this policy. So it says requests, suggestions, or complaints made by district staff are covered under a different policy. So that would be an example of, we wouldn't use this because this policy is not to be used to appeal or to otherwise seek review on a personnel decision. So I think you'd be using some of those criteria at the beginning of this to determine whether this is the proper policy to pursue the complaint.
And so a person considering the appropriateness would be you? Essentially,
It probably is the first level would be a supervisor or myself, depending on where the complaint is coming from.
so then when it says the board reserves the right to reverse district administrator's decision, would that be saying that you would notify us that you made a decision and didn't find it appropriate? Or would that be up to the person making the complaint to notify the board saying you rejected?
Typically what happens if someone files a formal complaint and it gets to my level, I do a formal investigation and I provide the report to the party. I've also notified the school board at the same time. So in the event that that person wants to appeal the decision from my findings, you already have that information, which I think is what is outlined here. So it would be the complainant would need to file that formal appeal, and I believe there's a time frame within here of 5 days to file that.
Are you saying there should be language that says she will notify the board?
I think it's in there.
Just a different paragraph.
It says under C, third level, the second paragraph under C, it says the request must be submitted promptly after discussion. So I need to, okay, so this request must be submitted promptly after discussion with the supervisor. The district administrator shall respond in writing to the individual and shall advise the board of any resolution of this matter.
So D has the 5 days. I was gonna suggest for C, we should define promptly instead of leaving it so subjective.
I'll give an example. We're in the process of a complaint and that wouldn't be a reasonable timeline. So depending on how much investigation has to happen, sure. You wouldn't necessarily do the investigation, but you might make the decision. That's why it's quicker. I don't know, Kyle, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the situation that we have right now is a perfect example of that. Just the number of witnesses that are required to be spoken with. There's probably 10 different people that had to be spoken with, and they have schedules that some of them I wouldn't have been able to talk to based on their professional schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, once it gets to us, it's all packaged up and
Right.
Yeah.
ready to go.
I have a grammatical request on this C.
Under third level.
First paragraph, it ends at, this request should include,
Oh, right.
and it looks like the bullet points 1, 2, and 3 should be immediately following that.
Yeah, it needs to be cleaned up.
And the request must be submitted paragraph should be after those bullet.
Yeah.
points.
I'll have Ann fix that for next week.
They submit.
I guess I'd like to hear too, sorry, Brooke.
No.
If anybody has any suggestion on whether they think the committee should stay in.
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
So I understand that it is extremely difficult for committees. It's extremely hard for the board, but we are elected to do this job. But I did appreciate that there was that recommendation to us so that it wasn't, I mean, yes, it ultimately comes down to the board decision, but there was also kind of that check and balance I felt in place with the committee. I hear you and I want to respect that, you know, that this is difficult for the teachers in the committee. And so hearing that makes me perhaps go with option 1 instead, even though initially my, thought was to keep the committees. I hear what you're saying and I hear what Steve is saying as well.
I think it's just tough for people to put themselves out there and be scrutinized,
Absolutely.
where that's kind of our role.
That's our role, but it was nice to have some more perspectives. But also, like you said, they can come, they can speak, they can send emails. There's that.
They can remain anonymous if they.
Yes. To a certain extent, everything's open record.
Is there any other discussion on this policy? So just so everybody knows, the motion is for option number 2. If you don't like option number 2, you can vote against it. Then make a motion.
Can I ask one more question?
No.
Do other districts have committees typically for these? Or are they starting to get away from committees as well?
I haven't done that level of research, but I will give you just an example of some districts, when there's a complaint against human growth and development, they will bounce that back to the Human Growth and Development Advisory Committee that put it together, and that's the committee that makes the decision. So every district has done some different things around that.
I got one more grammatical thing. The last page, there's a bullet point B, and it ends with shall, and everything is stricken until letter H, where it starts with shall. I just don't know exactly how that should read.
Are you on? Oh, this on option 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Upon receipt of the information, the board shall, and then H starts, shall review the case.
I think you just need to put out shall and
Get
then
a shell out.
So B and H are the same bullet point?
They seem to be.
I think they're
Read.
removing all the
Yes.
middle ones.
Yeah, so there just needs to be a shall removed.
The H needs to be reviewed and the shell needs to be reviewed.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Sir,
And so moving forward to next week, if we vote on one, then we can't go back.
Yeah, you can.
We can't go back.
You're,
So we can hear from more of the
Yep.
again, teacher, staff, community.
Yeah, if you vote for, and you change your mind that you want to vote.
Yep.
on something else, this is just simply moving forward to discussion.
Okay. All right.
any other discussion?
The motion was for option 2, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kyle, did you have something you were gonna add?
No, Amy just,
I need to validate.
she asked if it was procedurally proper.
Okay.
I guess I would add one thing. The idea behind is, I'm not a person that deliberates, so it's just more of a perspective from legally, is that committees typically, when they're set up, it's take it out of the school district context. They're akin to administrative bodies where the people who man the committee or populate that committee typically are supposed to be and are thought to be people that lend some special expertise to whatever the issue is. That's not something special about this. That's what happens with drugs. That's what happens with employment law hearings. There's a level where the committee that makes up the initial investigation is typically thought to add something to that process. So I guess from what I'm hearing you say, that would be open to emails and everything anyhow. So I don't see that it has any, I would just say that I don't see that there's any due process problem with going either way. It's a committee is typically another level of due process that adds administrative expertise.
I would imagine if there's a complaint, the district would voice their opinion to us.
We would like to share our recommendations.
Yeah.
I actually have a question, like if there's no committee, how would?
Yeah.
How would you?
Yeah, like if there isn't a committee, it might be good for you to clarify for yourselves, how would we be able to do that?
But I would imagine like any other agenda item that comes before us, it happened in a meeting, and with our committees, we meet with the administrators of each committee generally. And we would get that discussion and we bring it to the board. And that same discussion will be brought to the board like we do for everything else.
We could put some language in here that says something to the effect that if we do eliminate the committee, we had an administrative guideline, which you'll notice would be deleted because the administrative guideline talks about the procedures for the committee, so that would no longer be needed. You could potentially put language in the policy that says, in the event there's a complaint that goes to the school board, there'll be an opportunity for a district response and a complainant's response for the board to consider.
I think that would be important.
Right, so you'd hear kind of like,
I think, yeah.
why the decision was made from a district perspective, hear the complainant, and then you'd hear both sides, like that was what happened at the committee.
We have.
I think it would be important to have that in the.
Is that kind of what you're saying, Crystal?
Yeah, that's the administrative.
Yeah. I guess my wondering is that like, is like email and just like, I don't know that you would want just the feedback from me to just be whatever. I think if you really wanted or needed I think Kyle's point's important, wanted or needed I would say the professional expertise of the people, like, how would we be able to give that to you? You just might want that clear.
And I'm proposing that we would create an opportunity for both parties to share their perspective in front of the board.
I agree.
Does that make sense?
What we did that night.
Yes,
Yeah.
Subject to the appeal that we have.
right.
Mhm. And I think that's important that it would be written.
Would you like me to,
So I think,
the board like me to add some language in here about that?
I
Yes.
think so.
We could probably draft something together based on some of the other
Okay,
protocols that we have in the administrative guideline.
Well, in the fourth level, paragraph D, it talks about all written submissions shall include all correspondences pertaining to the matter. So having them going to you and they're not happy with your answer, everything would be forwarded to us that has transpired until that point.
and that's what happened when we had a committee. If the committee's not in place, there really wouldn't be anything for me to submit to you.
Well, this would be,
That's
they're
different.
coming to you.
That's a staff complaint. That's different than, that doesn't necessarily, that's a little bit different.
Okay.
But, right? I'm talking, the committee is specific to a curriculum complaint, not a staff complaint,
Okay,
Mhm.
because we wouldn't be able to do that in open session.
Mhm.
gotcha.
That's specifically about a person. I think what's been talked about the last few minutes is the instructional materials.
Yes.
Right.
That is the curriculum.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to get perspective too from our librarians as well.
Well, I'm sure she'll give that
So,
just 1 minute.
yeah, okay, good.
Jump ahead.
Sorry.
So Amy, you're coming up with some for us.
I'm going to work with Kyle to draft some language as part of option 2 that would incorporate a complainant and a district response that would be part of the board consideration. And I'm also fixing some of the grammatical.
It'd be a format for due process, basically.
Yeah,
So that it's not just Wild West.
So it would be option 2, removing the committee though, but putting something else in place.
well, it would, so where it says the board shall review the case, it probably is right there. The board will hear from the complainant and the district personnel
Okay.
and advise the complainant in writing of their decision.
Okay.
An H, do you see what I'm looking at? Okay.
All right, is there any other discussion on 9130? Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes. All right, next one is the first reading of new policy 2522, library media centers.
Move to approve option 2.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Oh, I do have Jody here. Jody, do you want to just give them a little bit of background on some of the thought process we put down?
So I'm just gonna, I put together the presentation, a lot of, or a little information, a lot of what you hear in this, you've already started talking about with the previous one. But instead of changing things, I'm just gonna do what I said and then ask me all the questions you want. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jody Wright. I'm a high school librarian. I'm a teacher librarian. I've been in that position, don't cry, Steve, for 20 years. Okay. And I've been in the district even longer than that. I'm very passionate about our district library programs and about supporting the students in this district. In my role in the district, I take the lead for our amazing team of librarians. And though what I'm saying tonight is from me, met several times with our library team and I'm sharing a lot of their thoughts as well. I've also reached out to librarians across the state and looked to make sure that the language of this policy 2522 really is in line with what our programs are doing, what's happening across the state and what the American Association of School Libraries is recommending. I want to start by saying thank you. This policy has been a huge missing piece for a very long time. And so I'm really excited to see having separate language for our libraries and the work that we do within our policies. One of the reasons this is really important is we are required by state law to develop district library plans. And those plans need to include the library policies. We have been putting in our curriculum policy and faking it for a while. And the state has been letting it slide. So we're excited to have the right policies in place as we move forward. This policy will meet almost all of the requirements along with our technology policy stuff that also has to accompany that as well. There's one simple change that I would love to see in 25-22 that I read this policy over a whole bunch of times and missed it until this morning.
First or second option?
Either.
Okay.
Either one, doesn't matter. This is
All right.
both of them. In the very last section of the policy, it states that students may be assessed fines for the late return of borrowed materials or damage or loss of materials. In our current practice and by the recommendation of the library field, we don't charge fines for late items. We know that that process really discourages students from checking out books, and that's what we don't want. And I want to know that no matter who's in these positions, that policy doesn't come back into place.
So your recommendation would be for the board to consider crossing out that last section of fines.
And it wouldn't, we do still have the ability to charge for lost and damaged materials. We're pretty flexible with that. But I do think that part's important, but that just the part about assessing fines for late return of materials.
Well, and the other piece is, I mean, we already have a policy 6152 that outlines that, so I don't know if we really need to be repeating it. The board can consider that.
So what is covered in materials of library materials? Are we talking just books? Are we talking computers? Like,
With that,
like what level of materials?
it would pretty much be books and any like day-to-day checkout things that students would check out from the library. So not their one-to-one computers, that's separate. That wouldn't be the library materials. So primarily it's books. We also check out things like DVDs and like sometimes we'll check out like, SD cards or
Audiobook.
random audiobooks. We check out some strange things. So, but if it's in our library system, check out from there.
And we already have in the student handbook kind of the guidelines around computers.
Yes. And then the other thing that I want to address is your choice between option 1 and option 2. In the original language, option 1, it included the committee to review any reconsideration of library materials that are brought forward. This has been the process that we've had in the past. And with that process, there's an opportunity to review a wide range of information about the materials in question. The committee would review the information from the original complaint. They would review professional reviews and information collected by the school librarians. And the voice of the teacher librarian on the committee would share the rationale for the original purpose of the purchase of that material, as well as how it fits in the overall library collection. There are so many things that go into a decision of what we purchase for our libraries. It's important that those are involved in making the final decision, understand that original purpose that we purchased those materials. Was it requested by a student or staff member? Was it purchased because it is written by a high demand author or it fits with a high demand genre or theme? Was it purchased to provide support for a particular curricular standard or an area of study? Does it provide an example of a particular literary technique that is being taught in one of our courses? Is it a resource that students can access to deepen their understanding of a curricular topic, or an alternative text that students can use if they're struggling with the classroom text? Does it provide an opportunity for students to hear firsthand experiences outside what they've experienced themselves? Does it open up students' minds to see beyond our small town of Superior, Wisconsin? all of those are pieces that are considered as a teacher librarian makes the decision to purchase each and every one of the books in our school libraries, along with a whole bunch of other things. And without hearing that voice as part of the committee, the rationale for that inclusion in our libraries is lost. As teacher librarians, our years of schooling and continued training in collection development and material selection make us well prepared to make those purchasing decisions and to provide the committee or the board that rationale for having those materials in our collection. I personally, and in representing our team of librarians, would urge you to stick with option one. We really do support the committee piece of policy 2552. Because we want to make sure that that full rationale for keeping the materials is also heard by anyone that is part of that review. But if you are compelled to stay with option two and bypass the committee process, it is absolutely imperative that the board has a formal process for reviewing both the complaint and the rationale for the inclusion before coming to a final decision.
Yuri, can I ask, and I guess you, hearing what Amy said and how it was stressful for some of our teachers and staff being on the committee, do you support perhaps having something else written in similar to the public request suggestions or complaints where we do have included librarians into the process where maybe we don't have the committee, but we have the educator or the professional able to present those type of things to us, where then it doesn't put the others in the hard position? Or
in talking to our library team this past week, we are all really in support of maintaining the committee.
Okay.
We feel it's really important because there's a lot of voices that when we talk about, does it have something to do with what's happening in an English classroom? Does it have something to do with a certain group of students? I feel like having all of the voices of that committee is really important.
Okay.
However, if the feeling, like I said, is really strong that the committee is not important, those structures absolutely have to be in place, because I wouldn't want it to be that some librarian in the future has the choice of whether to provide that rationale or not if they are afraid to step forward. That's part of why we do what we do.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Amy, do we have to pick option two for both? We can do option.
No, they are closely connected, because if the complaint is specific to library materials, then we need to share with them the policy around 2522. But I just thought it was important that we talk through both of those at the same time. And you just have to, I would want to visualize 3 years from now, if not all of you are sitting here, is there if someone were to look at our policies and be like, I have one different than the other, we just want to be able to explain that.
It's good too.
If we had the same language that we are gonna add on the first one, it still gives librarians or anybody who wanted to be on a committee the ability to voice their opinion and be part of the district response. No different than in the first policy we talked about. I think they can still make their collective point, whether not all of them want to speak in front of us or one person does, or who is represented district. Maybe they, as a collective librarians, bring their suggestion to the district and the district respond. It gives it to us. I think keeping the policies the same, adding that information, I think still allows for all that information to get to us if they wanted to.
I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. I appreciated the recommendation of the committee and having the other perspectives when making the decision. But I do understand that it puts some of those individuals in a really hard situation as well. So I don't.
Is the board supportive of removing the language around fines? Are you okay if we make that adjustment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes, I'm struggling with it now.
Me too.
I've heard you said I see a little bit of a difference.
Well,
Did the librarians that you met with Had they thought of the perspective that it was really tough on the committee and the individuals that were on that? They had thought about that?
And honestly, at this point, it is an absolute expected part of our jobs.
My opinion, the rationale for the first policy is the same rationale for the second policy. You know, even if staff changes 1, 2 years, 3 years down the road, are those same staff going to feel the same? It's the way you look at it. I think with the added language, you're going to allow that same response. You're going to still allow the same committee members to voice their opinion, whether it's through all of them coming before us or through the district, or we're not silencing anyone. We're keeping the policies the same and still allowing for both sides to give their opinions or concerns to the board.
No, it's not that bad to say, but I think the piece that's missing is that professional conversation in that committee, the back and forth about comparing the complaint to the rationale for keeping the material and really having those discussions.
Can we still have that?
Can you have that without having a formal committee? Can you just have?
Because it wasn't just a librarian, like we had, if I remember right, the committee was quite large. It consisted of like a board member.
Admin, teacher.
I think Jody's point is there's rich dialogue. Well,
There's rich dialogue that happens between a parent and a teacher and an administrator and and a librarian, for example. There's a rich dialogue that will happen that then, based on that dialogue, they make a recommendation to me and then I make the recommendation based on their feedback. I think Jody's point is that dialogue that happens in that committee structure wouldn't happen. You would just simply hear, this is our side, that's their side. And then
we couldn't.
Is that safe to say?
We couldn't do that.
Does that, I mean, in paragraph A, it says it would be addressed with the teacher librarian first.
Yeah, this is after, not every complaint should come to you. I mean, the whole goal is that we can manage.
Well, my thought is
That at
the
the-
conversation's happening
Yeah,
initially anyway.
but I think Jody's point is the rationale for why we make decisions around library and curriculum materials. That rationale happens through a conversation with the professionals. And it wouldn't be like a back and forth conversation. It would just be a one-way conversation to you. I don't want to speak for you. I feel like I'm talking for you.
So with that first piece, so if a parent or student comes with concerns about a book, then my first step is to just have a conversation with that person about what their concerns are, why they have concerns. Then I take that information, I dig deeper, come up with sometimes there are things that, I don't read every one of the 20,000 books cover to cover. So then you have to dig deeper. Why was this one selected? How does that match up against the complaint? And then bring that information back to the individual who's complaining. And a lot of times it's just a simple conversation between the two people and it's resolved and that's the end of it. Sure. Sometimes it goes a little farther, involves an administrator. And then when there's no resolution, that's when we move to the official complaint piece. But we still haven't had a professional conversation with
Across
admin, teacher,
librarian.
parent.
And that's an open session, correct?
Anytime you have a committee structure that's governed under your policy, that has to go through public notice.
So even though there's only one board member representing.
Even if there's no board members on it,
Sit there and.
there's no board.
Because I'd like to hear the dialogue. I know that was one thing the last time that I missed because I thought we couldn't come. And I wish I would have been there.
Well, there was a reason, no, there's a reason in the policy because there's a reason
So
why you're not.
cannot come for the dialogue.
There was a
Only the
reason.
one representative.
There was a reason around that. I gotta go back to the.
If you have a board member on the committee to run the committee,
Mhm.
but if you have the whole board come to that committee's dialogue, you're essentially going to be in a position of making a decision prior to even coming to the board and hearing all the sides. So if you stay out of the committee and it comes to the board, you should be neutral enough to be able to listen to both sides and not just what happened in that committee meeting. That's why the board stayed out of it last time. That's why the board stayed out of it.
But then we
So-
missed that dialogue, that important dialogue
And that was gonna be my
that we're
point.
arguing.
That'd be
for.
my point being made is regardless of all the dialogue they want, or that could potentially happen with the committee, we're not sitting here listening to that dialogue. We're not sitting here, they're still gonna have to present to the board the information that that committee came up with, regardless of how much discussion or dialogue they have. We're not gonna be part of that. So if you skip a committee, they have to bring it to us. If you have a committee, they have to bring it to us. We're getting the same information, just two different ways here. And again, we're going back to why we take it out in the first policy is the same reason for this one. We're not getting less information. We're not getting less facts. We're not getting less dialogue between one side or the other. We're getting the same amount we would whether or not there's a committee. The only thing we're doing is trying to limit, I guess you could say, the exposure of staff to having to deal with those committees and deal with the complaints and having the.
Like the balance of trying to make sure staff have a voice and a part of process for these kinds of issues, but also not putting them in a position.
I understand where you're coming from, but we're still gonna get the information the same way regardless.
If it has to go. They don't all have.
If it goes to the board, yeah.
So now all of them have to go to the board.
That's true.
Not unless they resolve it with you.
But if every formal complaint then has to go to the board.
But even if we had a committee, doesn't it go to the committee and still has to go to the board too?
Only if they appeal the decision. Not every complaint
It's the
is
same thing as them appealing just the librarian. If it's the librarian, they appeal it, goes to the next step. They're gonna appeal all the way,
Right,
regardless.
right.
Well, Jody's point though is we have had complaints that haven't gotten to the board because they've been resolved at the committee structure. So,
Committee gives them a chance to resolve it before it has to be brought to the board. So it's,
yep.
Like where it gets resolved and there hasn't, we have had situations where it gets resolved and there has not been an appeal.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yep, just like the staff complaint process. I've had resolution on all of those. You haven't seen any of those in 5 years because we didn't be able to resolve it.
I feel like it would be so beneficial to hear from the staff who, yay or nay, whether you're for this or not, to like give that perspective. Like Amy, you say it's really hard to fill that committee for the first policy.
I'm anticipating it will be. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and if we have people who are passionate and staff who want to be part of these committees to try to resolve before it comes here, because this can be a harder environment to try to resolve something for a lot of people. So I just feel like we need to hear from more staff and hear different sides on what.
Our committees obviously tried to be balanced and all of that too with,
I mean, the administrative guidelines really outline what you're supposed to do with that.
That's what the membership.
Yeah. Who you're supposed to, yeah. We try to pick people who are closest connected to the issue.
Sure. It just involves people who are more in it than we necessarily are. And not so much like, we'll make the decision, you know? If it can be resolved in a peaceful way through a committee, like that's way better, I think, than coming here.
Just, is it appropriate for anyone to speak on that now, or is that something for next?
I think we would have to wait till next meeting, Mr. Smith.
You can send emails over the course of the week, or you can sign up for public comment next week. And you'll be able to talk at the front end of the meeting before any. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
who made the motion first?
Steve.
Steve. So you'll have to amend it, right, for the late fine portion. And then,
We're passing them on to the next meeting.
Yeah. So we could call for the question. And vote. Or I could amend my motion. Correct?
Yep.
I amend my motion to accept option 1.
second,
There's a motion and a second for amending the motion to option 1. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Here, no discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now moves on to next week. That concludes the action items. I have no discussion items. Informational items. First one is
Just both, yeah, both of these two are obsolete. The one is obsolete if you adopt the 25-22. It's not relevant. And then the other one, if you go with option 2, you would delete the 91 or the administrative guidelines. So
those are really for next week, once
yes.
we have a discussion on
Yeah,
that.
and that's why you left it at the end. We didn't know what you were gonna.
So just say it out loud. Those are deleting administrative guidelines, 25-22, student use of library media centers depending on the policy. Also deleting administrative guideline 9130, review committee procedures depending on the outcome of that policy as well. I have nothing else for this policy. This concludes my committee, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Just a reminder, the regular board meeting is next Monday, February 12th. We'll be in closed session, 4:30 to 6:30. We'll reconvene at 6:30 here at the school board office. Thank you for being here.